this weekend. You've already met Senator Bernie Sanders. Right now, let us welcome former Secretary of State, former U.S. Senator from the state of New York, former First Lady, former 2008 presidential candidate, Hillary Clinton.
Great to see you here.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Please have a seat.
Thanks so much.
I'm sorry, it took me a second. There were a lot of titles to get through there.
I know, I'm sorry about that.
So, here we are. You fought off a late surge from Bernie Sanders in Nevada. Your supporters say they're feeling momentum. You picked up a big endorsement. There's a gentleman in the front row, Congressman Clyburn, who wound up coming out for you. Where is your head on it? Do you believe that you have turned a corner?
Look, I believe every election or caucus has to be taken seriously. You have to work hard for every vote. That's what I'm going to be doing here in South Carolina. I'm taking no vote, no place for granted. So that's not how I think about it. I think that, we have had 3 contests. We have about 47 to go. And I'm going to work hard in each and every one of them.
Now, I notice you did not bring me any package of paper tonight of speech transcripts. Earlier tonight, I asked Senator Sanders, will you give your transcripts of speeches? That's what you said. When the others give, then I'll give.
Right.
He said he doesn't have the bank speeches. If he can find any of the speeches that he did give for money, he will gladly give the transcripts up. So, will you agree to release these transcripts? They have become an issue.
Sure, if everybody does it, and that includes the Republicans, because we know they have made a lot of speeches. But look, what is this about? This is about whether I have the best plan to go after Wall Street, whether I have a record that already demonstrates my willingness to take on Wall Street and financial interests. And there's no question about that. I did it before the '08 crash. I have done it since in this campaign. I have been absolutely clear. And a lot of people have said I have the most comprehensive, effective, comprehensive plan to make sure that Wall Street never wrecks Main Street again. I've also said I will use the tools that President Obama achieved in the Dodd-Frank regulations, best, tightest regulations we've had in a long time. And they provide the opportunity to break up the banks if they pose systemic risks. And I've said that I would do that if that becomes the case.
All the more reason to remove this as an issue. You know everybody's not going to bring up their transcripts. There'll be 100 reasons why.
Why is there one standard for me and not for everybody else, Chris? I mean, at some point, look, I'm on record. I have a record. It certainly is far different from the Republicans because they think actually and have said that the cause of the Great Recession was too much regulation on Wall Street, which is an absolute joke. I have been upfront and strong on this issue for a long time, as strong, I would argue, as my esteemed opponent. So, you know what? If people are going to ask for things, everybody should be on a level playing field, and I'm happy if that were the case.
You do understand, though, the temptation of the unknown. I don't have to explain this to you. You understand that when people ask for something.
But with all due respect, there is no unknown. I am on record. I went to Wall Street before the Great Recession. I called them out. I said what they were doing in the mortgage market was going to cause serious problems. I called for reining in CEO pay. I called for ending the loophole that lets hedge fund managers get a lower tax rate. I have been on record for a really long time. I've now put forth a plan. It's in the public arena. I want people to hold me accountable because that's what I'll do. The other part of this, which I find, somewhat concerning actually, is the argument seems to be that if you ever took money from any business of any kind, then you can't fulfill your public responsibilities. Well, that's just not the case. I mean, President Obama took an enormous amount of money, more than anybody ever had, from Wall Street in 2008 when he was successful in his election. And then he turned around and pushed through the toughest regulations that we've seen since the Great Depression. So the argument just doesn't hold up. But again, if everybody's going to do the same thing, then I'll be part of it.
We will continue to wait then and see what happens on that issue. But there are others that must be covered, of course. President Obama just released his plan to close Guantanamo Bay. You've said you believe in the plan. One part of it, though, will be the transfer of the people who are there now. There is a military holding facility in Charleston, South Carolina, which may receive some of the people from Guantanamo. Tell the people of South Carolina, I asked the same thing to Senator Sanders. Why is it okay to have some of the worst people in the world in their backyard?
Well, first of all, the president hasn't made any decision about where the transfers would go. And I think what he wants to do, and I hope he can achieve this, is to work with the Congress. But I've been on record in favor of closing Guantanamo for a long time, since 2008. When I was Secretary of State, working closely with the president, I had a special envoy to find places that could take back some of the prisoners, just as President Bush had done before President Obama. I believe the president is right to try to close it. I think it is a continuing recruitment advertisement for terrorists. I know that he wants to work with the Congress, and I hope the Congress will work with him, Chris, because there is no reason for us to continue to have Guantanamo, which is a very serious, I guess, symbol, I would say, for a lot of the people around the world who would do us harm and try to recruit others to do us harm. So where they end up should be a matter of negotiation. I know that's what the president wants to do. I will say this. We've got a few places in the country, not here, but you know, the maximum security place that I think is in Colorado. There's one in Illinois that holds some really terrible people who have committed horrific crimes, including the mastermind of the first attack on the World Trade Center in 1993. The president is trying to figure out what to do with people who are too dangerous to be released, who have to be maintained in a very tough maximum security environment. And all I can hope is that the Congress will work with them. I remember back in the 2008 election, President Obama, Senator McCain, and I all had the same position. So I hope some of the Republicans will understand that we're in a fight against terrorism. We have to defeat it. We don't need to have Guantanamo hanging out there over our heads.
Memory is short for compromise and comedy these days. Comedy with an I-T-Y, not the joke that sometimes we behold. So how about we talk to some voters and start with some foreign policy?
Sure,
All
absolutely.
right? I want you to meet Denzon Winley. He's a student here at the University of South Carolina, ran for student body president. He is an independent voter, says he is undecided, has a question for you, Secretary.
Great, great.
Good evening, Mrs. Clinton.
Good evening.
First of all, I hope your campaign goes better than mine did.
Well, do not give up.
Oh, no,
keep
ma'am.
going. If it's something you want to do, don't get deterred.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, you are for a regime change in Syria. But as we have learned in Iraq and recently Libya, getting rid of longtime dictators and their affiliates can lead to problems unforeseen. So if Assad was to be deposed, how would you direct the State Department and international partners to install within our country a government capable of containing and mitigating the sectarian and insurgency violence that will undoubtedly increase, thus further destabilizing the region?
Well, that's an excellent question. And let me say, first of all, talking about Syria and Libya, in Syria, it looks like, and I hope it's the case, we will have a ceasefire by the weekend. I know that Secretary Kerry's been working very hard on that, and I hope that takes hold, because we need to turn the attention of everyone in Syria to defeating the terrorists. And we've got to stop the ongoing bombing that Russia has carried out in support of the Assad regime against the Syrians themselves who are trying to, wage a civil war against Assad. So I'm hoping that that happens, because we do have some work to do, and I would like it to be work that, number one, has safe havens for people in Syria. Number two, begins a political dialogue, which was your question. How do you create some kind of outcome that will have a more stable future? Who do you get at the table? I worked on that when I was Secretary of State. I know Secretary Kerry continues that work. And the Russians and the Iranians are the two biggest supporters of the Assad regime. So they have to be part of any kind of ongoing political diplomatic effort. Libya is a little different. Libya actually held elections. They elected moderates. They have tried to piece together a government against a lot of really serious challenges internally coming from the outside with terrorist groups and other bad actors. They're working to try to unify the different factions inside Libya so that they can take united action against the terrorists and try to get the east and the west of the country working together. You know, they're a rich country. They have oil. They're not without resources, but they've got to get over their internal disputes. And the United States, Europe, and others are helping them to try to do that. And I think they need some time and support. I know the United States has taken some actions against terrorists inside Libya, particularly ISIS training camps, and I support that because I want to give the people of Libya a chance to actually form a government and realize the promise of getting rid of Gaddafi, who had so oppressed the country for more than 40 years, hollowed out all the institutions, threatened genocide against his own people, which is one of the reasons why the rest of the world intervened. And I'm hoping that we can give them the time and space to actually make a difference for their country in the future.
How do you explain the time and space to people? Because when you look at Libya, for example, you're right about ISIS being there. The U.S. just had to bomb. The place, by most estimates, is in its nightmare phase right now. Is it an example for people to say, you see what happens when we get involved? You see what happens when you take somebody out? You don't know what's going to replace it. Maybe we shouldn't have done it that way. Do you believe there is a mistake involved in Libya right now?
Well, let me make 2 points. One, let's remember what was going on at the time. This was at the height of the Arab Spring. The people in Libya were expressing themselves, were demanding their freedom, and Gaddafi responded brutally and said that he would just hunt them down like cockroaches, and made it very clear that he would use his mercenaries, because he didn't have a standing army. He had a lot of hired mercenaries from around to do literally that. The Europeans, who are across the sea from Libya, came to us and said, this is on our doorstep, we need your help. Basically, they said, we were with you in Afghanistan, we need you now to help us with Libya, because we've got to prevent this terrible happening that could result from Gaddafi. We had Arabs come to us and say the same thing. We formed the first coalition between NATO and Arab nations. Arab nations actually ran a lot of the air campaign and other support systems. So I think you have to look at what was going on at the time and why it seemed, and I agree with this, to make sense for us to bring our special assets to the table to help the people of Libya. Now, I go back to this point. They had an election, and it was a good election. It was a fair election. It met international standards. That was an amazing accomplishment for a nation that had been so deprived for so long. The United States was in Korea and still is for many years. We are still in Germany. We are still in Japan. We have a presence in a lot of places in the world that started out as a result of conflict. And if you think about South Korea, there were coups, there were assassinations, there was a lot of problems for the Koreans to build their economy, to create their democracy. This doesn't happen overnight. And yes, it's been a couple of years. I think it's worth European support, Arab support, American support to try to help the Libyan people realize the dream that they had when they went after Gaddafi.
So a young lady standing here has a question from you. Her name is Kyla Gray. She's a student at Columbia College. She is leaning in your favor, but you have work to do with Kyla. She has not made up her mind completely yet. Kyla, what's your question for the Secretary?
Well, good evening. Recently, I started wearing my hair natural, and
I'm sorry, you started what?
Recently, I've started wearing my hair natural, and I've noticed a difference in the way some people address and look at me. In the wake of things like Ferguson and Black Lives Matter and the recent backlash against Beyonce for her Formation video, there have been a lot of racial tensions recently in our nation. So my question to you is, what do you intend to do to help fix the broken racial relations in our nation?
Well, Kyla, first of all, thank you for being so candid and brave to stand up and say this about yourself, because I think it really helps to shine a spotlight on what are one of the many barriers that still stand in the way of people feeling like they can pursue their own dreams, they can be who they are, they can have the future that they want in our country. And I believe strongly we have to deal with systemic racism. And systemic racism is found in our criminal justice system. It's found in housing, in job opportunities, in education, and it's also cultural. And so there are barriers that people are encountering that I think we need to be honest about. You know, I just came from Central Baptist Church with Mothers of the Movement. I think they might be here. And yes, they are. You know, I'd want them to stand up if you don't mind. I mean, these are the bravest women. You know, these 5 women have lost children to police actions and to random, senseless gun violence. And there's no doubt that in each case, as they said at the church earlier, there is a racial component to it. A young black teenager, 17 years old, playing the music in his car too loud with a bunch of his friends, and a white guy comes up and tells him to turn the music down. They exchange words. The man pulls out his gun and kills him. So we have serious challenges. And I think it's important for people, and particularly for white people, to be honest about those and to recognize that our experiences may not equip us to understand what a lot of our African American fellow citizens go through every single day. So for me, when I talk about breaking down all the barriers that stand in the way of people's ambitions and dreams, racism, along with economic issues, educational issues, and all the rest, have to be addressed. Otherwise, you know, we are never going to be the nation we should be. We're never going to overcome our legacy, you know, dating back to slavery, segregation, Jim Crow. It is still, unfortunately, alive and well. And you've got places in this state where an African American baby has a higher rate of dying than you have in a lot of other places. The infant mortality rate can be compared to some third world poor countries. You know, in this state, your governor and legislature wouldn't extend Medicaid, and so people can't get the health care that they deserve to have. So I think there are a lot of barriers that we have to be honest about. And I think honesty and willingness to listen to each other, actually respect each other, would go a long way toward us rolling up our sleeves and dealing with a lot of these issues and giving you the feeling that you have a right to wear your hair any way you want to. That's your right. Now, you know,
You look great.
as somebody who, you know, has had a lot of different hairstyles, I say that from some personal experience.
I'm just happy to keep my hair. That's my whole. You know, Kyla mentioned Beyonce. Let's talk about Beyonce for a second, because why not? No, specifically what happened at the Super Bowl halftime performance. It upset a lot of men and women in the law enforcement community. They felt that they were targeted, and they feel that this is one of many anti-police messages. And now there's this resulting call. Don't buy her CDs. Don't support her because she does not support the police. Do you understand where they're coming from? Do you agree? And how do you see in terms of reconciling these points of view?
You know, look, I think there are an enormous number of police officers in our country that perform honorably every single day. They put themselves in harm's way. They connect with the communities they are sworn to protect. And we should show them all the respect that they have earned and deserve. But we have problems in our criminal justice system in a lot of places that we can't ignore. And, you know, put aside any particular celebrity or any particular song or performance, the fact is that we have too many instances here in South Carolina. We had Walter Scott, North Charleston. There was a young white teenager, if I believe right, Zachary Hammond, who was unarmed and killed in a police action here in South Carolina. We have lost too many young people. So what's the answer? I don't think the answer is for us to find ourselves in opposing camps where we're just going to be looking at each other with, you know, mistrust. We have to figure out how we're going to lift up the good practices, reform policing, provide more support so that force is a last resort, not a first choice. And that means helping to train somebody who was in, you know, the restaurant that wanted him moved, showed up, and You know, so he started beating this young man with a baton. And when the young man, you know, tried to protect himself and grab the baton, you know, the officer pulled out his gun and shot him. Now, and, you know, numerous times. So we've got to come to grips with the fact that we've got to do some retraining here. We've got to do some work to make sure that our police are understanding how best to deal with situations where somebody's not armed, somebody's sitting on a park bench, and he ends up dead. You know, so there is work to be done, and I think the right response is, let's respect the police, let's be sure that we hold up those who are doing the right things and protecting us, and let's try to help more police follow that example, and then let's hold police behavior accountable so that there's an incentive for people to change how they are doing police practices. And you know, President Obama had a policing commission, and, you know, I embrace all of their recommendations, and as president, you know, I would try to work with the police and work with the community and work with victims of violence, getting everybody together, because what we want to do is stop this from happening again. We want to save lives. We want to prevent any other mother from going through what these mothers have gone through, and that would be my goal as president.
Have another voter for you.
Okay.
Sally Horn. On the left, she's a student, part-time law clerk, says she's undecided, has a question. Go ahead.
Hi.
Welcome to the Palmetto State.
Thank you.
I am from Rock Hill, South Carolina, and I had the privilege and delight of attending Agnes Scott College in Decatur, Georgia, a women's college. We share that, and I was wondering if you could elaborate on how attending a women's college prepared you for the specific challenge of running for president, especially when it's often challenging when people don't recognize women's issues as significant or women themselves as significant.
Well, that is a great question.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have been to Agnes Scott. It's a wonderful campus. I think you must have had a great time there, just as I did when I went to Wellesley College, a women's college. Look, I think what I got out of going to a women's college was that women were in charge of everything. You know, that's just the fact. And, you know, we ran the student government, we ran the newspaper, we ran the yearbook, we ran all the activities. So it was a great leadership opportunity. And, you know, I know that you can find that in many different settings, but for me, it really helped to give me the confidence and the understanding of what leadership meant. It put me in some challenging positions to negotiate issues that I learned a lot from. So I feel very grateful for that experience. And, you know, when I got to the United States Senate, I was so grateful to the women who'd been there before. And we formed a bipartisan group. And we used to meet off the record, on our own, no press, nothing ever reported out of it, you know, to trade information and ideas about how you did the work of being a senator and how we could support each other where appropriate. You know, funny little things like, what do you do with your handbag? I mean, you know, that's an issue. You got to figure it out. But serious things about how we could support each other on women's issues, how we could make some of the concerns we had about child care, about equal pay, real to the rest of our colleagues who may not have thought about it as much as we had. So I think there's real support to be found when you're lucky enough to work with other women. And I was certainly fortunate in both the Senate and the State Department to have that experience. And I give a lot of credit to my education, equipping me to be able to do the work that I've done.
Secretary, I have another question for you. Jamie Rakoski, she's a law student at the University of South Carolina. She's leaning towards Senator Sanders, has a question.
Hi, Secretary Clinton. So my mom supports you, and I've been leaning towards Bernie for several reasons, including that he's not corporately funded. I feel like he really understands my generation's problem with student debt and, you know, how much pressure we're under with that. My question for you is, what do you think has been causing this common generational gap that I see so many places between your supporters and Senator Sanders supporters?
Well, I'm not sure, to be honest. I really don't know. But I want you to know that whether you end up supporting me or not, I will support you. And I will support the young people of this country because that has been my life's work. And let me say a word about student debt, because I honestly believe that my plan to make college affordable and to help you pay down your student debt is a very effective way of doing what I know must be done, particularly with student debt. You're in law school now?
Yes.
So did you
Very
come out of
expensive.
college with debt?
Luckily, I didn't have any debt from undergrad, but
But now you do.
yes, very
Yeah,
much so.
I borrowed money when I was in law school also.
Yes.
And I know that it can be a burden. And so here's what I want to do. I want you to be able to refinance your debt at much lower interest rates. It makes no sense at all that you're paying. Do you know what your interest rate is?
It's between 7 and 9%. I know I'm already $75,000 in debt, and I'm only halfway through.
And you know, I want everybody to understand this. She borrowed money for the principal and to be able to pay her fees to go to law school. And I would bet that a good percentage of what you now owe is because of the interest. A 7 to 9% interest rate when we haven't had interest rates that high in years. It makes absolutely no sense. So we need to refinance it. We need to strip as much of the interest payments out that we possibly can. We need to give you a chance to move into a contingency repayment program. That's what I had when I went to law school. I paid back my loan at a percentage of my income because I went to work for the Children's Defense Fund right out of law school. And I didn't make much money at all. I can't even remember. I think $14,000 is what sticks in my head. But I paid it back as a percent of my income. So I could go to work and do the work that I love doing. It brought me here to South Carolina to do a project to get kids out of adult jails. And I really am grateful for that. So I want to move you into those programs. And then I want to have a date certain when your debt ends. I don't think you should be paying debt more than 20 years at all, and shorter if we can figure out how to do it. And I don't think the federal government should be making money off of lending you money to get your education. I think we've got to fix that as well. And I'm going to be introducing more national service jobs so that if you do national service, you can get basically your education free, which I think we should do to have more young people involved in national service. And then on the affordability side, I do disagree with Senator Sanders with his plan about free college, because I want to have debt-free tuition. But I don't believe that my family or Donald Trump's family or a lot of other families that can afford it should have the advantage of free college. I think they should be contributing on behalf of their children. So I want this to be a program where we have affordability, and I have a particular commitment to the historically black colleges and universities, because both the public and the private HBCUs do so much good. So I hope you'll go to my website, hillaryclinton.com, and look at what I'm actually proposing, because I think you might find it interesting, and then go talk to your mother.
All right. On your left, we have the Reverend Robert Cooper. He's the presiding elder of the Florence Dillon District for the AME Church.
Okay.
He is still undecided and has a question for you. Reverend.
Hi, Reverend.
Good evening, Madam Secretary. I'm Reverend Cooper, practicing mortician and a family member. My question to you is that my concern is about the illness of the family, the degradation of the value of the family. When you look at the stage of American scene, all the actors and actresses are little children that used to sit around mom and dad table. All the shooting, the looting, and the killing, they once sat around mom and dad table. That was the first academy they ever attended. And it points to there's an illness in the family, and it seems as though the young people have to take all the blame for it. When you think about the shooting that happened in Charleston just a few months ago, if that young man had had a chance to have breakfast with his mother or a tight-knit family, someone would have detected that he had a problem and might not would have happened. If you were to become president, what would you do to help some wellness come back to American family?
You know, Reverend, I think your question is an incredibly important one, because strong families are at the core of a strong society, a strong America. And the family is the first introduction any child has to how to behave in society, what's expected, what the values should be. So we do have to do more to help lift up families and support families. And a lot of families are under tremendous economic stress right now. And a lot of families just are trying to keep body and soul together, trying to make enough money to keep food on the table and a roof over the head. And the working hours that are demanded by so many employers make it difficult for a lot of families, particularly headed by single mothers, to be able to spend the time that you would want, and I would, of course, want to see families spend together. So I think it's both an economic issue as well as a sort of personal issue. On the economic front, let's raise that minimum wage. Let's get more income into the pockets of those women who are minimum wage workers. Let's get equal pay so that people who are working hard are given the dignity, the respect, and the income they deserve. Let's get incomes rising again. Let's get more good jobs for more people, something that would help the family feel that they weren't on such rocky terrain and not sure where the next step would be. And also, let's do more to help support families as they raise their children. And I think this is not something that can be done only by the government. I wrote a book called It Takes a Village to Raise a Child. I believe that. So I think faith institutions, community institutions, trying to get the extended family to be more supportive are all part of how we help families do right by their own kids. And I think we can also do more with better early childhood education when families are looking for it, they can't afford it, a universal pre-K program so that more kids get off to a good start in school. But time is the most precious commodity, and we need to figure out how we get more income into families so that they can actually have more time with their kids. And I will do everything I can because I believe in this. That's how I was raised. You know, my husband and I, certainly did everything we could to make sure that one or both of us was home with our daughter, that we were there at night to have dinner, to, read to her before she went to sleep, and we believe in that. And we know it makes a difference for the children. So what we want to do is to help more families have the support they need, which too many of them don't have right now, to be able to do more to get their own kids off to a good start. And I think that would be a great way to help families and to help our country get stronger in the future.
Thank you,
Secretary, speaking of time, fortunately we have more time tonight, but we do have to take a quick break.
Okay.
So we're going to take a quick break right now, and we come back. We do have more of your questions for former Secretary of State Clinton and her final thoughts when our CNN Democratic Town Hall continues here in Columbia, South Carolina. So let's see if Senator Bernie Sanders and Secretary Hillary Clinton can deliver.
Tonight, the Democrats turn to face voters before their first chance to win in the South.
South Carolina has the opportunity to make American history.
The fight goes on. The future that we want is within our grasp.
Bernie Sanders, victor in New Hampshire, promising victory in November.
You want a candidate who is going to defeat Donald Trump. You're looking at that candidate.
Hillary Clinton, Iowa winner, Nevada winner, talking commitment.
I am going to fight for you because we've got to knock down every barrier that's holding Americans back.
Two candidates connecting with the voters before deciding who will get the most important job in this country.
I just love answering questions.